welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Void podcast. Enrique here with my partner Vince, and we have a special guest all the way from the West Coast. And folks, we're so excited because we started in our last podcast on our nationwide tour. So we started with Texas, now we're in California, and Vince is going to introduce our special guest, and I'm so excited for it.
Absolutely. We have the pleasure of having not only a former Army Special Forces guru, Green Beret, but also the founder and CEO of Broughton Hotels, Mr. Larry Broughton. So we're so excited. Thank you for joining us. So we'll just start off. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, thanks, Enrique. Thanks, Vince. Well, first of all, I want to thank you guys for doing this kind of podcast. I speak all the time about what I call the leadership gap. You guys call it a leadership void. I think we're talking about the same thing, right? There are so many people out there that are just missing the mark. And if more people would step into the leadership gap, I think we'd have fewer problems in life, in business, in politics, in religion, in education. So thank you guys for stepping into this gap and helping out. Because I think it's one of the most significant challenges that face our times, right? So who the heck am I guess is really the question, right? Why am I on your show? Crying out loud. So I own a hotel company based here in California. We have some hotels in Chicago, others in California. We'll probably talk about this as we get going, but we're about to go on a big growth spurt as well. Just like you guys are doing a nationwide push, we're doing the same thing. I grew up in very rural New York and was looking for a way out. We can get into this a little bit if you want, but I ended up enlisting in the Army when I was about 19 years old. I moved out of my parents' house when I was 17 with my twin brother and a buddy of ours. My twin brother and I were into martial arts at the time. I was working at McDonald's, flipping burgers for a living, became a shift manager, but ultimately went down and enlisted and tried out for Special Forces, made it, and it changed my freaking life forever, right? Spent about 8.5 years on Special Forces A teams and ended up feeling like I wanted to get into the political arena. I'd spent some time around the world and started thinking, damn, if these knuckleheads can run a country, I can run a country. How hard can it be? Right? And so I thought maybe I'd want to get into the political arena. Didn't know whether I wanted to run for political office or whether I wanted to get in the State Department, but I did know that I wanted to kind of be in the arena, as Teddy Roosevelt talks about, right? Instead of just being one of those spectators in the stands who point the finger and say, oh, they're doing it all wrong. I was willing to get in the arena, get bloodied, get muddied, and actually really make a difference. Well, after playing in that arena for a little bit while I was going to college and being in the business arena, I realized I could really make more of an impact on my community and make more of a multi-generational impact on the people I cared about and loved by being an entrepreneur, by creating opportunities for other people, and then by coaching them and helping them change the multi-generational curse of poverty, for instance, because I just realized the political arena was not going to get it done. So I ended up spending about 14 years with my former company where I became a partner. And then back in 2001, I launched my own hotel company. So 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago. And here I am down here in Southern California. I've got two great kids, a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old who keep me very busy, keep me young. Right now, as we were talking about before the show started, just slaying the dragons. If people are watching this today or in this season that we're in, we are in unprecedented, apocalyptic in some ways times. And I think that some of the leadership stuff that worked centuries ago will still work today, but some of the management skills that worked 10 years ago aren't going to work today. So we really have to be nimble. And so I think that life is awesome. There's great opportunities out there. I have a friend who used to say, it's a great life if you don't weaken. And I think that's true. So that's who I am. That's what I do. Oh, and by the way, I write books. I do some TV from time to time on MSNBC, on Fox, and on Travel Channel. I've got the current book I've got out is called Victory. It's a #1 bestseller. It's for entrepreneurs and leaders. I'm working on another book right now on storytelling. That's kind of what I do. And I coach and mentor people. So I jokingly call myself a schizophrenic entrepreneur because I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. How's that?
That is a lot. That's for sure. Now, I love how you really summarized what we're dealing with right now, and it is not only challenging, but sometimes borderline scary for a lot of folks. This is deadly times. So when you said apocalyptic, I was like, yeah, it's a lot of people perishing. But
Enrique, it's not borderline scary. It is scary. Let's be honest. When this first happened, I was speaking at an event in, I think it was Dallas, March 3rd or 4th, when this was the first event where people were like doing elbow bumps and foot taps and that kind of thing. And we really didn't get our brain around what was really happening to the country at the time. But by the time I got back here to my office, back there to my office, I'm in my home office now, and things really started getting closed down, I started calling other CEOs that I knew, because I knew the tendency for leaders. It's a lone wolf journey sometimes. At least it feels that way. It shouldn't be, but it feels that way. And I knew, based on my own history, if I didn't reach out to somebody, then I was going to isolate. And you guys as veterans know the worst thing that we can do is squirrel up, right? The worst thing we can do is squirrel up. And left to my own devices, that's what I was going to do. So I knew if I was going to do it, other CEOs were going to do it. And that first couple of weeks when I was making these phone calls, there were people who would break down crying on the phone with me and say, for the first time in my career, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I have no idea. I'm so glad you're calling because no one else has called. And we have to have the courage to reach out to other people, right? And this is the plea. I don't want to jump right into it. But as a leader, we have to have guts. Courage changes only everything in our life, right? Think about the times in our lives, Enrique, where they didn't go the way we wanted. But if we would have had the guts to step out and do the hard right over the easy wrong, things would have been completely different, right? And so by picking up the phone and calling some of these CEOs, I know for a fact, and it's not me, but by me making that phone call, I saved someone from jumping off the building that day. When that downturn happened back in 2008, I know 6 CEOs that took their own life in that first week. Okay, this is a scary time. So it is scary. And I think we just have to admit it, because too many of us think that we're just going to power through it and pretend that it's not scary. No, it is scary. But that doesn't mean that we're not courageous. That doesn't mean that we're not brave. It means that we move forward anyway. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think it is so important that we as leaders talk about this, because we beat ourselves. Oh my gosh, I'm scared. I'm not supposed to be scared. No, it's scary is normal. Right? But moving out in spite of it, that's the thing to do.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, and by all means, interrupt as you will.
I'm sorry. Okay. Good.
No, you're good,
Good.
because
Good.
The reality is that these are one of those gaps that we talk about, right? The gap, the void is exactly where we talk about. And I love you guys' mission statement, which says authentic people delivering creative solutions, right?
Yes.
And so the fear is there, the scare is there.
Yes.
It's what leaders do with that, right? And
That's
so
right. That's right.
So kudos on you for reaching out, because in reality, that is what you did. You spared someone and a solitary action or decision without help, right? And so that was great on your part. And being that type of leader, I'm sure that that your folks are, absorbing that. So when it comes to your hotels and things like that in your hotel chain, what can you tell us about that endeavor for you?
Yeah, well, it was generally, we've got several hundred team members, and but currently we've had to furlough about 65 or lay off about 65% of our team. Now, I did something a little bit different and ballsy, excuse the language, ballsy, um, vulnerable, courageous, and some people's views stupid and crazy. And that when this first happened, I looked at the calendar and looked at the impact that these types of events have had on the hospitality industry, on the business industry or the business community, and realized that if I don't reach out for help publicly, that we're not going to survive. And so I did a video and did a public plea and said, friends, family members, if you're willing to help out, I'm willing to take your help. I'm willing to receive. I think the worst thing that we can do when somebody offers help is say, no, I've got it. It's like you're rejecting the gift that somebody's willing to give you, right? And so I had some people who say that was the craziest thing I could have done, is to go public and say, hey, any help you're willing to give us, we're willing to take, we're willing to receive. The interesting thing was this. We call them team members, we don't call them employees. Mm-hmm. And the reason is you call somebody an employee, words have meaning, right? You call someone an employee, they're going to show up like an employee. Hey, is it payday, boss? Thank God it's Friday, kind of thing. Well, if you call them team members, they're going to show up like team members, right? Like we're all in it together. And so when I had team members emailing and calling me, sending me texts, thank you so much for doing that. It proves to me that you care about us. What I saw oftentimes, and you guys know this all the time because this is what you talk about the leadership void, is that so many CEOs were squirreling up and not communicating with their team members about what was really going on. The team members and the employees, they know really what's going on. They can see it. They're the first ones to see it, right? When the cash register stops ringing, right? Or paychecks are bouncing, but the CEOs are going dark and not communicating. Their mind is going to go to the worst case instead of communicating what's really going on, right? So I think your question is like, what are we doing? Well, what we're doing is we battened down the hatches for the first couple of months and went into survival mode, right? Just really trying to figure out how are we going to do this. We went in and we started negotiating with banks, negotiating with vendors, doing whatever we could to keep the doors open. We started reopening. So we had some hotels that didn't close. And at the simultaneously, I was going out and said, all right, we got to pivot. We can't just manage properties. We've got to actually go into acquisition mode because there is an opportunity here. The opportunity might not be here today, but it's going to be here in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever. And so we started going out to high net worth investors and saying, okay, here's where the landscape is today. Here's where we think the battlefield is going to be in 9 months. We need to build a war chest so that we can actually take advantage of the opportunities that are going to start presenting themselves. And so we're about to go into acquisition mode now that we wouldn't have been able to go into 2 years ago. So we're trying to not take advantage of, but take advantage of the opportunities that are being laid out in front of us. What I'm trying to do is not be the bottom feeding shark. Are sharks bottom feeders? Anyway, I don't want to be the shark. I don't want to be the vulture. I don't want to be the bad guy. I want to be the white knight. I want to be somebody who comes in and not screw somebody over when they're down, right? But to do some fair deals where they have a little bit of dignity on the other side, and we, create opportunities to move forward as well. Because I am seeing that, Enrique, where there are people who are taking advantage of people and not taking advantage of situations. Does that make sense? It's a little bit nuanced, but anyway, so that's what we're doing now.
No, I love it, Larry. This is Vince again. So,
Hey, Vince.
Talk about the public plea. That's one thing I decided to do was really help you and your company out,
Yeah.
me giving it to your cause because I felt it. I felt the words came out of your mouth from my heart to your heart. Yeah. So I'm grateful that you did that because a lot of leaders will not do that. They shame away, close the doors, and as you mentioned, 6 committed suicide in 2008. So it's phenomenally worthwhile. It's not stupid. It was the best option you did. So I love hearing that. And early on, and if whatever you can share, look, I would love to know and share with the audience what is on the horizon for Broughton Hotels. Be
Good.
curious to know more.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that, Vince. I'm going to tell you, doing that public plea, it was not an easy thing. I had a fellow veteran friend of mine, Chris Dombach, who's a Marine friend. So now we just need a Coast Guard guy to jump on here in a minute. And I'll mention a Coast Guard so we can round it out here in a minute. But a friend of mine, Chris Dombach, a former coaching client of mine, and I went back and forth about this. And I was like, I'm going to email people, maybe and he said, no, dude, you got to do it from heart. You have to do a video plea because people are going to feel it, right? Things get lost in translation when it's just written, right? Thank you for saying that, Vince. But I did have some clients who say that was really stupid. I had some senior executives who say it was a really stupid thing to do. But in the meantime, I've seen a lot of our competitors fold up. They're no longer around any longer because they didn't really speak out, reach out, and so they become victims of the circumstance, right? So what's on the horizon, I think it's great things. The challenge is, as I'd mentioned, we are going into an acquisition mode, but the challenge is communicating that to team members so that they can believe in the future, because everyone around them is talking doom and gloom. You turn on any news channel, I don't care which part of the political spectrum you're on, where you get your news from, it's like the world is crashing in around us. And when they look at their family members or they look at friends who are no longer employed and their businesses have shuttered up, they've closed up shop, and they don't know what the heck they're going to do, it's very easy for people to get sucked under by the negativity, right? And so if I am, in some people's cases, the only positive voice speaking up and speaking out and talking about optimism, and that I'm positive about the direction we're going, and I believe in our future, and I know that things are going to turn by the end of the year, at some point people start thinking you're crazy, right? But what's the alternative, Vince? What's the alternative, right? One of the mantras that I'm not the brightest tool in the shed. I'm pretty smart, but I'm not the brightest one. So I live by mantras. And one of the things I often say is that you can't light a fire with a wet match. We as leaders need to be the voice of optimism. We need to be the ones who are sparking, being that match for other people, speaking positivity and speaking to people's, not only people's potential, but the potential in projects that we're investing in. So the horizon, I believe, looks awesome for us. And I'm not just speaking hyperbole, but I really do believe that great things are going to happen. Perseverance and tenacity are things that are often overlooked. It's hard to teach tenacity and perseverance when you're getting your MBA. This is why I believe, and I know this podcast is not just for veterans, but we are veteran brothers talking to veteran brothers here. Tenacity is one of those things that you just get through facing adversity over and over again and knowing I'm going to come out of this alive on the other side, and that those battle scars actually build confidence, right? And so this is part of the problem, I think, in our society right now, is that we bubble wrapped people so much and not allowed them to fail, that now, and it's the thing I'm most worried about with my kids, or was worried about with my kids, is that they hadn't really faced any real adversity until now. But we've got leaders out there that are in their 20s and 30s, and I've got some in my organization, that are mid-level leaders, that this is the first downturn they've ever faced. And it's the worst one we've ever seen as a country. And so it's not like they had the opportunity to play in the Pee-wees and the junior varsity. They went right into the major league apocalypse, and they're learning, and they have to deal with it. And so I'm spending a lot of time dealing with that. So the horizon, I think, is that even though it's tough right now, we're creating strong, tough leaders to help us in the future. So that's what the horizon looks like.
That's wonderful. And it sounds like, as far as, and both Vince and I, we teach leadership, we do mentorship, we do coaching. So we we're hearing the kind of things that we are proud of to hear from a CEO, and not just throwing flowers at you. I'm listening to you intently, and the words that you're using, I'm looking at your facial expression. I mean, doing a full-on blown profile here, but it really speaks to the caliber that your hotel chain has at the helm, and I give you kudos for that. That should give a good sense of of certainty to your team, to your team players. And those are the things that we like to see out of CEOs, and we know that and speaking directly about leadership, because we're kind of transitioning into that, so it's almost like a segue here. When we know you served in the Army, we know you did special forces, undoubtedly one of the premier seats at the table when you talk about adversity and facing harm and danger at your own peril. What professional development outside of the military do you engage in to keep you at that tempo, right? Because you could you could win white.
Great question. Great question. So I'm an avid reader, avid podcast listener, and I'm in a mastermind, and I have a coach. I think that the worst thing that you can do is to try to be in a leadership position or be in a business executive position, be an entrepreneur, and not have mentors, not have coaches. Think about, just do the sports analogy, for crying out loud. Who are some of the best athletes that we've ever known, or best in their fields? Tiger Woods has coaches. Mike Tyson had coaches, right? Name the sport. Everyone's got coaches, in baseball, there are people who have throwing coaches and catching coaches and batting coaches and whatever it is, right? So I'm always out there trying to, at 57 years old, I am still trying to become a better version of myself. If there's an area that I want to be better at, or that I don't know about, then I hire somebody to help me. It's a fast track, right? The worst thing we can do is pretend that we've got it all together, that we know everything. Some of the most amazing leaders and mentors I know were not afraid to say, I don't know. That's not my area of expertise. That's why I hire people, right? But I see it all the time where people that are in junior leadership positions, they're so afraid to say, I don't know. And it's the worst. That's the quickest way to disaster, is to pretend that you know something that you don't. So professional development, I have, personally, I have masterminds and coaches that I lean on. Internally in the organization, which I think is even more important than just me, I make sure that I'm identifying my team members' strengths and helping them move closer to their fullest potential. And I do that by doing strengths assessments, primarily the Colby A Index and now they call it the Clifton Strength Finders. But many of our team members have taken Myers-Briggs as well. I do teaching on that kind of thing to our team members. We have a thing in our organization called the Peak Potential Pack, where we send out a book and a podcast around a certain topic on leadership, finance, marketing, sales, whatever it is. And supervisors and managers read this as an organization together, and as part of their ongoing professional development. One of the things I kind of touched on it earlier is I really try to teach our leaders and managers, we try to call our managers leaders, is the power of storytelling. You guys have heard this, right? Facts tell, stories sell, right? And storytelling and parables have been a way that leaders, Marcus Aurelius was famous, but is one of the greatest leaders of all time, right? The third great emperor of Rome, was a great storyteller, right? You could get people inspired to go into battle by telling a story of how things could be and how they will be, right? And so I think that that's powerful. So I'm writing a book right now on the power of parables and storytelling. So I think that that's one of the neglected areas of professional development as well, because we can have all the science skills checked off, But if we can't relay those to people, to our team members and to our clients and to um, our, our clients and customers in an effective way where they understand it and buy in emotionally, it's worthless, right? I mean, that marketing and sales is about storytelling, right? Leadership, effective transformational leadership is about storytelling. So I think that's an area that's often overlooked that I really would encourage more people to get involved with. So that's the professional development space.
Wow. Well, so we have definitely a plethora of reading and podcasting and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sharing your story, and really
Yeah.
what really gravitated to me to listen to you, hearing your story.
Yeah.
As a coach, you having a coach and a mentor is great, because as a
Yeah.
coach myself, one thing I love to always ask clients in this
Mm-hmm.
situation is like, what is the upside of the of the current downside situation? You know, because there's always a silver lining. There's always a positive. And
Yeah.
another thing I share is that is like, we don't drown by falling in the river. We drown by being submerged in it.
Yeah.
So if you keep yourself there, you're not going to always go up and be resilient, have the perseverance and the tenacity.
That's so great. Yeah, that's good.
So
Good.
back when you were listening and hearing and emerging as a leader, what advice did you receive? And what would you love to share?
It's very interesting because you already used one of the words. What was I listening, right? Well, one of my mentors said, listen, 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 right? And you've heard the adage, right? You have two ears and one mouth. Use them proportionally, right? And it's so true. One of the things I say is I listen, I learn, I lead. You got to listen first. You got to learn from it. Then you got to lead. I listen, I learn, I lead. So that's one of the tidbits of advice I got. Another one was know your team. You have to know your team and have an emotional connection to your team. Herb Kelleher, the former chairman of Southwest, I'm going to butcher this quote, but what he used to say basically was that we've got it all wrong, that we've used our team members and managed our resources, and it should be the other way around, right? And so that's really important. And you can't really lead and manage your team members if you don't know them and know what are the challenges that they're facing. What are their goals? What do they aspire to do and become, right? The Gallup Strength Find, or this Gallup State of the American Workforce Survey finds that 67% of the American workforce is disengaged or actively disengaged. And usually that's because they feel like they're being used. They feel like they're not being professionally developed. That's oftentimes why people leave their organizations, is they don't feel like their leaders or managers are invested in their professional development. And so they lead. One of the tidbits I got while I was in San Francisco from a mentor of mine was lead through love, not fear. Too many people that are in leadership positions try to lead through this dated command and control structure. And there are times when command and control, like, do it because I said so. But that does not usually work in the business arena. Right. But I think that you get a lot more from loving your team members. And veterans, I think most veterans get this. I think that there's a misconception among veteran leaders, among the civilian class, and that they think that vets are warmongers, that they're going to come out and they're going to be hard asses. But you don't raise your hand and say, hey, I'm willing to go to battle. I'm willing to lay down my life because you're evil or because you're mean. You do it because you love. You love our way of life. You love your family members. You love the brother and sister to your right and to your left. You love so much. That's why you do it, right? And so if we take that same love into the business arena, I think that we get a lot further. But the problem is a lot of veterans don't like to use the word L-O-V-E, love, you know? So that was one of the best pieces of advice I got, was to lead through love, not fear.
That's amazing, because I'm listening, and you mentioned challenges, and I'll ask you about that here in a second. But okay. Your story brought me back to a time that I was hired as a veteran, right? Yeah. And the whole veteran nostalgia for them, I guess, was drill sergeant at Oats 500 hours hitting the trash can, making everybody work, right? And so they got the other version of a veteran, which is the guy that loves their people to the mission, right?
Yeah,
loves them
yeah,
through the mission, gets them to the end. And
yeah.
so it was a challenge because they got somebody they thought they was they didn't expect to see. But that's funny how you brought
Yeah,
that up. You
yeah,
mentioned challenges. You mentioned those type of things with your
yeah.
teammates and what sort of challenges did you face that made you a better leader?
Challenges I faced early on.
Hmm.
I didn't have confidence in myself. Okay, so I grew up. Here's what I'm going to encourage everyone to get therapy. I grew up thinking that I was dumb, that I wasn't smart, I wasn't good enough, I would never measure up. And it wasn't until I got into martial arts. Now I had some quasi success as a wrestler in high school, but still there's those negative things in your mind. Like I had a high school guidance counselor tell me that I was not smart enough to be a veterinarian. That if I wanted to work with animals, which I said I did, so I want to be a veterinarian, that I could get into FFA, Future Farmers of America, but I wasn't smart enough to go to college. All right. Now, when somebody in authority tells you you're not smart enough, and you have family members who tell you you're not very smart or you're just a big dummy, you start to believe that stuff, right? So the first time and I knew that I was smart, but not in a different way. Now, as it turns out, I'm dyslexic. I wasn't diagnosed until I was in the military. But it wasn't until I took the ASVAB that I scored really, 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 really high on, where I had somebody, the recruiter, say, dang, you're really smart. That was the first time anybody told me I was really smart, because I scored in the top 1/10 of 1% in the country at the time on the ASVAB. And that's why we said you could even try out for special forces. And so I've heard different stats, but I'd heard that the average IQ on a special forces A team is 135 or something like that. These are not dummies that are on an A team, right? But still, that has always haunted me. Not so much to today, but then when I got out of the military and started my business career, I didn't know that I was smart enough to do this, right? And so I had to get over my own mental hurdles, my own mental challenges about this. And I've had challenges where when I started my public speaking career, I went out and bombed a few times, and I could have curled up in the fetal position and said, I'm just not cracked up for this. I'm just not good at it. But instead I leaned into it. And I went to my assistant at the time and said, Katie, you need to get me 30 talks in 30 days, so that I don't bomb again, so I can learn how to get through this, right? And so most of the challenges that I face, I know are right up here, right? And so I would really encourage people to surround yourselves with people who believe in you, who are willing to speak positivity into your life, who believe in the potential that you have as a leader and as a human. So that's the biggest challenge for me. And I'll bet for most of your viewers and listeners, it's the same challenge. They think that it's outward. They think that it's the economy. Or they think that it's somebody speaking ill to them, whatever it is. It's how do you said, I think it was you, Enrico, that said it, maybe it was Vince. It's how do you respond to these challenges? That's the key, right? We could shrink from them or we can lean into them. Sadly, most men, I think, in this country today are wilting away, leaning away from them instead of leaning into them. That has to change.
Absolutely. And hearing you speak about thoughts forces the actions that you do. So, but it's all predicated on the values that you have instilled in you. As
Yes.
you mentioned, you had that thought lingering, and certain actions either drove into certain directions, but when you bombed, your values was really the ones who got you to push through. So very important to have those values
Sure.
and have that mindset and know thyself, right?
Yes.
Self-key. And as you sound like a real great strategic thinker and strategic leader, so just curious about strategies you use with your team or strategies you use to deal with change.
Well, both, I guess, is I've always believed this, but I think it's even more hypercritical today, And that is that we're leading through what I call apocalyptic times right now. And we have touched on a little bit, but maybe I could just be a little more succinct on this, is that too many leaders stop communicating. And the best form of communication during apocalyptic times is over communication. We have to communicate, 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 and then communicate some more. If there's any question at all, you communicate again. And so one of the best strategies that I'm hearing from our team right now that we have implemented is that we do morning stand-ups. Even through Zoom, we get all of our leaders on a morning Zoom call. It's very short, and we start with this. Here's one of the most powerful strategies that I have found to work, and it's very simple to do. As we go around and check in with everybody, they start with, here's what I'm grateful for today. Gratitude and anxiety can't live in the same space, okay? And so when they get really granular about here's the things that I'm grateful for today, and some of them sound really corny, and I can tell some people get a little bit shy about it, but now that we've been doing it for a few months, people just lay it all out there. Here's what I'm grateful for. And sometimes it's like, I'm just so grateful that my dog, for my dog, I'm grateful for whatever. And people list what they're grateful for. So that's really good because it starts to change the mindset from the negativity to the positivity, right? So communication and gratitude are two of the most powerful things that we can do. Now, as a leader, I think it's hypercritical to be speaking about who we aspire to be, not who are we today. We all know who we are today, but who do we aspire to be? We aspire to be a better version of ourselves. We aspire to be, a national, whatever, fill in the blank, but here's who we aspire to be. But our team members won't recognize it. Our clients won't recognize it. Our partners won't recognize it. Our investors won't recognize it unless we are speaking it out loud. So those are the three things, I guess, I think are the easiest things that translate to everyone. There are other things, I guess, we could talk about, like what's measured is improved and all those kind of things. But I think those three things anyone could apply to their businesses or life. Is that all right? Did I get close to what you were looking for?
Very wise words indeed. And Larry, we thoroughly enjoyed. I'm going to speak for Vince. I normally won't, but we thoroughly enjoyed this session with you, listening to at a CEO level with country or hotels in different states and looking to push forward and capitalize on a blessing, because that's what it amounts to. Yeah. At the end of all this, there's going to be chips that fall. Right. And you have to, as a business person, you have to be poised to be able to recognize that and acquire that for the good of the whole. And that's what I get from your conversation. And I appreciate that. If someone would wanting to communicate with you, reach out to you, even just send you a note, how would they do that?
Well, I'm on all the social media platforms. It's at Larry Broughton. Instagram's the one I'm not on any of very much anymore, but Instagram is probably the easiest one, but LinkedIn as well. But there's a couple of websites that folks can go to if they want to go to one of our hotels. It's broughtonhotels.com. If you want to see everything I'm doing, it's larrybroughton.me is the website, and you'll find everything there, from coaching to books that I've done to the hotel company. So mentoring programs. So larrybroughton.me is one of the websites, or Broughton Hotels, or Larry Broughton on all the social media platforms.
Folks,
if I'm not looking, my assistant Melissa is looking, so it won't be missed if you send us a DM.
Yeah, you heard it first from Larry. Him or his teammate will definitely
back
out to you.
Exactly.
If you want to stay in Chicago or Northern or Southern California, please visit one of the Broughton Hotel properties. You will not be upset. You're going to be totally satisfied. I recommend it, and please do that. As you all are here, we thank you, Larry, again. grounded in gratitude is what I heard. And that's what we are today. We're grounded in the gratitude of your presence, and we thank you for being here. And as we're moving forward nationwide, next week on the 29th of July, we have another special guest from the Wounded Warrior Project, Coleman Brooks, who is a regional alumni director. So we're so happy to keep moving this needle forward and hearing from great leaders of doing great things in either profit, nonprofit, and different arenas. But again, Larry, we thank you and we salute you. Hats off to you.
Thanks, brothers.
Cool.
All right, folks. So we've enjoyed a great session, great talk, and we want to wish all of you that are listening a great week ahead. But if you want to communicate with us directly, the leadershipvoid@gmail.com, send us requests. You know that every week we say, hey, if you have some shirts or some mugs for us to drink out of while we're talking, please do that. If you want to be on the show, please communicate with us as well. And for all those listening, have a great week. Be blessed.